y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and this is going to be a Heel Heat Top 10. The topic of this Top 10? Wrestlers who should leave WWE. Now we're going to include some people that are in the NXT ranks on 205 Live, on Raw and SmackDown, but basically these are the wrestlers that I believe would be better served applying their trade elsewhere, that are not getting used up to their full potential in WWE. With that being said, let's jump right into it with our number 10, and that's the glorious Bobby Roode. Amazing theme song aside, they've taken Bobby Roode and they made him from a guy who was one of the main players in TNA and then even NXT, and they made him basically a one-trick pony, all based off of the theme song. It's kind of a gift and a curse, because the theme song is so instantly memorable and so good that fans love it. However, they don't seem to want to press the wrestler behind it and put him into that upper echelon. Now, normally I would say, if Bobby Roode was a younger wrestler, that they have time to fix this and flesh this out. But he's older. He's been in wrestling for almost 20 years now. While he still has some prime drawing potential, Bobby Roode should leave WWE. I could easily see him stepping right back into TNA or Impact Wrestling now and being a main star there. I could see him easily being used in New Japan. I could see him being a guy that, after Cody Rhodes, could be a guy to carry that NWA World Championship. And all these things I don't see happening for Bobby Roode in WWE. I don't see him becoming a world champion or a universal champion. He may get a US title run or intercontinental run or be part of one of the mixed matched up tag teams that win a tag championship. But I think that's the ceiling there, which I think is a crying shame, because here's a top tier talent, whether it be on the microphone or in the ring, and he's not being used as such. Now, our number 9. This is the guy that's been in WWE a lot longer than most people even realize, and that's Zack Ryder. Zack Ryder barely gets on television, and if he does, it's on the Superstars or Main Event, and it's a crying shame. Here's a guy who went out, had nothing for him to do. He created his own buzz with the Z True Hollywood Stories show, and was really one of the first wrestlers and wrestling personalities to use that platform to get themselves over. Unfortunately, this being the WWE, instead of using that to continually build his momentum, they pretty much made him shelf the show. And they use him sparingly now. He's one of those guys where he's almost at the point when you see him in a battle royal or coming out to break up a wrestling match or a fight that you go, oh, Zack Ryder's still there. You kind of forget that he's on the roster. And that's a real crying shame, because here's a guy who has a personality that just connects with the fans. As we've seen with shows like the 10 Pounds of Gold series that NWA put out, with the Being the Elite series, YouTube is something that you could use to help promote your wrestlers, promote your characters going forward. There's whole promotions that don't have, like, historical TV networks, but are getting major followings just by posting their stuff on YouTube and Twitch now. Twitch has become a major player into wrestling, which I believe Zack would have been right on the cusp of, and he would have been right there on the leading edge. If the Z True Hollywood Story would have kept going on, or he would have been allowed to make something similar, I believe this guy can easily connect that buzz. I mean, like I said, he connects with a wrestling crowd. Him and Kurt Hawkins have a podcast called the Major Figure Podcast It's a great name. are major figure collectors. It's about wrestling toys. And I've mentioned this to people that don't necessarily collect wrestling toys, but they've listened to the podcast and they like it. It's because he's an engaging character. He's someone the fans want to cheer for. To me, if he were to leave, I could see him easily becoming a star and being that guy, kind of like a Colt Cabana, like the Young Bucks, someone that makes himself outside of the WWE machine. Now, our number 7 is another guy like Bobby Roode that made himself, or actually, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. Our number 8, wow, I can't believe I did that. Here's a guy that, like I said with Bobby Roode, kind of the opposite. There's still time for them to get on board with him, but I don't really think they are, and that's Chad Gable. Here's a guy, like I said with Zack Ryder, like Bobby Roode, has tons and tons of charisma. He's a masterful wrestler. He can throw suplexes like it's nobody's business. To me, when I watch him, he reminds me of a young Scott Steiner, pre-Papa Pump days. And the drawback's always going to be in the WWE that he's short, that he's small. But I think if he were to leave WWE, he could be a huge star in Ring of Honor. He could be a huge player in TNA. Or, I keep calling it TNA because of Bobby Roode and mentioned TNA one. Impact Wrestling. He could be someone like I said with Roode that could carry that NWA championship. Someone that could go and wrestle in the best of Super Juniors in Japan. And I think there's still time for them to turn it around on him. But if I were him, I would start looking at my other options because I believe he's going to be used to his best potential outside of the company that he would be in the inside of it. Now, number 7, now that I'm not skipping ahead, like I said with Bobby Roode, it's a guy that made himself outside of WWE before going to WWE, and that is Gran Metalik. Now, you may know him as Master Dorada, and you may not have seen much of him if you don't watch 205 Live. And even on 205 Live, he's not pushed as a main star. Here's a guy who's an absolute stud, who's an absolute legend. He was reaching that status in his home country of Mexico. He was brought in for the Cruiserweight Classic. They kept him around to keep that kind of, help try and bring the Hispanic American viewership, which is something they court, but they have yet to find out a way to actually get it. And to me, the way that they use the characters once they're there, he's a guy that should be a big deal. He should be challenging for the Cruiserweight Championship. He should be one of the guys that kind of bridges between the Cruiserweights and the Heavyweights. He's a little bit on the bigger side of the Cruiserweights. So I could easily see him wrestling for the Intercontinental or U.S. Championship or even one day the World Championship. To me, I think the problem's always going to be with him is they're going to look at him as a guy to put over other wrestlers. Whereas if he was to be let go, let's say he goes to Lucha Underground, to AAA, to CMLL, to even New Japan Pro Wrestling, and other places too, I think that they're going to use it, especially some of the Mexican organizations, to capitalize on his star power and how good he really is. And I don't think WWE quite understands how to use him, let alone, I don't know if they want to understand how to use him. Now, coming off of that, we're going to go our first tag team on this list. At number 6, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. I had such high hopes when they brought these guys from New Japan. I had hoped that it was something more than them just trying to block talent from staying in New Japan and raid New Japan's talent. Here was a team that was on the top, the leading edge in New Japan. They were always in IWGP Tag Team Championship contention. However, in WWE, they're an afterthought. They're not even contenders most of the time. I mean, they've had a couple little things. They had a short run with the Raw Tag Team Championship. They're immensely entertaining, immensely gifted. They're founding members of the Bullet Club, which hold some weight with wrestling fans, guys that like myself and you, if you're watching this video, I know you're more than just a casual fan. I don't know where the disconnect is, because you would look at this team and you would go, these are two guys that Vince McMahon would want to push. However, for whatever reason, he's not, and he's not even trying, it doesn't look like at times. If I were them, I would join back with New Japan. They could be in part of this whole Bullet Club Elite versus Bullet Club Firing Squad war that's going on currently at the time of this taping. Or they could go a different route. They can, maybe join Suzuki Goon, who knows. Their possibilities are endless there. I know that they've said that they like to be in America to be around their families, but at some point, you have to go where you can maximize your potential and maximize your earning ship, and I think their maximum potential is in New Japan. Now, number 5 is another person who's exactly like the last two I mentioned, and that's Finn Balor. Finn Balor, aka Prince Devitt, was, again, one of the original members of the Bullet Club. Matter of fact, he was the original member of the Bullet Club. The hottest stable, arguably in the last 20 plus years in wrestling. The hottest stable since at least Evolution and probably since the NWO. They have this on-again, off-again thing. He's kind of... And this is going to sound weird how I explain it, but they kind of treat him like the girl or guy, if you're interested in guys, that you're ashamed of, but you call them when you're bored, kind of thing, if you understand what I'm saying. In other words, he's like the WWE booty call. They like to use him every now and again just to get a pop out of their crowd, but they never really have him in the plans to be Universal Champion. Now, maybe he was on that trajectory when he got his first Universal Championship and got injured right away. Who knows what they would have done with that run. Unfortunately, the injury hurt him. And there is still time for them to turn it around. For me, Finn Balor should be the guy who's in the Seth Rollins spot, who's in the Roman Reigns spot, who's in the AJ Styles spot. He's charismatic, he's over with the men, he's over with the women, he's over with the casuals, he's over with the hardcores. He's a guy that should be one of your flagship talents, but he's not, and that's a damn shame. If he were to be let go, much like I said with Gallows and Anderson, you could insert him right back into the Firing Squad versus Bullet Club Elite feud. You can have him skip that altogether. If he were to go to Impact Wrestling, he would immediately be the top guy in Impact Wrestling, and he's, I hate to say it, he's really better than even that. He's somebody that should be considered for a main event run and a main event at WrestleMania type guy. He's so gifted and could cross over in so many different areas that it's really baffling to understand how they use him, how they sparingly use him. It's one of those things that's always going to confuse me. There's time still to change this and maybe change the perception. However, to me, I think he needs to get out before they further tarnish his reputation. Now, our number 4 guy. This is a guy who I'm 100% convinced they really have no use for other than taking a name out of the indies and hurting the indies, and that's Cassius Ohno. This is his second go-round in WWE. There's always been the rumors that WWE wants him to shed weight, that they don't like his look. However, they keep hiring him, and every time that he gets that buzz outside of the company, they keep bringing him back in. And much like Bobby Roode, the window's closing a bit on Cassius Ohno. He's about 20 years in as well. And I would love to see him go back to being Chris Hero and going maybe a long stint in New Japan Pro Wrestling is the best for him, or maybe going to Impact Wrestling where he could be a star, or going to what he was doing just before this re-signing, wrestling PWG, wrestling in Evolve, wrestling here and there for Ring of Honor. I mean, it's such a shame that if it's the body thing, his body type, that's what's holding him back. It's a shame that they can't look past that and see that this guy is one of the elite talents in all of wrestling. He's got an absolute believable style. He's a magnanimous talker. He could work as a face or a heel very easily. He can put on good matches with pretty much anybody on the roster. Anybody, from Lince Dorado all the way up to Roman Reigns. To me, there's so much they're wasting on not using Cassius Ohno, and I don't think they're ever going to have a serious plan on him. So why not let him go and let him be the big star that he was before he even came in? Now, our number 3 is a guy, much like I said with a couple of these guys, he's had some on-again, off-again pushes, and that's Rusev. Now, Rusev has had some good, solid storylines behind him, and then he's had some terrible ones as well. As we've seen, he's been able to work and get the crowd behind him. Even working as a heel, he got the crowd to start cheering him, which could be looked at as a negative, and it could be looked at as a positive at times. To me, I look at it as a positive because they're giving him the kind of respect as someone we want to see. Someone, again, I hate to keep bringing this up, but he's someone that should be on the upper echelon of the card. He should be the guy challenging a Samoa Joe or AJ Styles for the World Championship, or even on Monday Night Raw in the mix with a Braun Strowman and a Roman Reigns. He's the guy who the fans look at as a top-tier talent, but the management looks at as a character gimmicky guy. And it's really weird how that works, because he gets huge reactions. I'd be willing to bet that he has really decent merchandise sales. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but I see a lot of Rusev Day shirts in the crowd, and I hear a lot of Rusev Day chants. Hell, even when you go to non-WWE functions, when you hear someone say something like, "What day is it?" everybody in the crowd responds with Rusev Day. And it's something that I witnessed myself. I went to Ring of Honor show not too long ago, and Jay Lethal was mentioning that the day was a special day to him. And as soon as he said it was a special day, the Ring of Honor crowd, a crowd that you would think would be against something that's so heavily gimmicked, starts chanting Rusev Day. Because he's that organically over. And to me, and this is a big problem that they have throughout the company, I don't know where the disconnect is, because they used to be able to say, okay, this guy's getting over with the fans, we're going to push him to the forefront. This guy's not getting over with the fans, we're going to pull back on him, we're going to bring back his thing. They used to be able to do that, and I don't know if it's something that happened during the John Cena run, because John Cena was immensely popular. As much as he got the mixed reaction, he was always the number one merchandise seller. But there's always been those guys that haven't got their proper push, don't get me wrong. But it seems like in the past they would adjust and bring somebody to a different level that they maybe didn't think of that. Stone Cold Steve Austin's a great example. He was brought in as a guy that was just there to put on good matches with their wrestlers. He wasn't brought in to be the guy, but they allowed him to go and do that, to become the guy. Mick Foley's another guy that's an example. He wasn't brought in to be anything. He was brought in as a favor to Jim Ross and expected to fail in 6 months. Again, there we go with another absolute legend. And you look at that, and why are they not doing that anymore? Why are guys like Rusev, like Finn Balor, like other people, not getting pushed into that upper echelon when they're connecting with the fans? Now, our number 2. It's a good number that it's 2 because it's 2 guys, our second and final tag team on the list, The Revival. Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder. You could argue, you can make a great argument that this is one of the top 5 tag teams in all of the world. You could put them right up there with anybody from the Usos to the Bar to the Young Bucks to the Gorillas of Destiny to the Briscoe brothers to the Christ brothers in TNA to the Lucha brothers. There's a lot of brother tag teams. To any tag team there is out there, their talent stacks up with them, and it's insane that you have this natural tag team that's so good and so easily connects with the crowd, but yet when you look at the WWE's tag team champions, the last 3 sets of champions have all been 2 solo wrestlers pushed together. We got Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler. I know they're in a kind of faction with each other, but they're 2 pushed together guys. You have the B team. You have other teams that just are makeshift teams because you have nothing better to do with solo talent. Then you got this team, the Revival, who you're not willing to push, who are a team, who are a real team, who really do connect with people, and they don't want to use it. I'd love to see them go and see what they can do in Ring of Honor. The thoughts just, it amazes me. What they could do elsewhere, them versus SCU, or them versus the Young Bucks, or them versus the Briscoe brothers, just makes me salivate as a wrestling fan. And especially with the NWA coming back into prominence, if they're going to bring an NWA Tag Team Championship around, there is no better tag team in all of wrestling to represent that than the Revival. I don't know, it frustrates me very badly, especially knowing how great they were in NXT. And if you notice, there a lot of these guys, there's that disconnect where they're great in NXT and they're pushed to the moon, then they get on the main roster and nothing for them. Now, before we get into our number 1, we do a little thing here called the best of the rest. Basically, this is stuff that was considered for the list but didn't quite make it. First off, Luke Harper. How can you go wrong with a guy that connects like him, that's that big, that intimidating, that scary looking, and can wrestle? I really don't get it. He really deserves better. He would, if you were to put him into Impact and to put him into New Japan, and I know I keep mentioning the places they could go, but this is what I see in my head when I think of these lists. He would be a main guy in both of those companies. So, to me, he's a guy that needs to leave. Next up, Apollo Crews, sometimes just Apollo. I think this is a timing issue because they brought him into NXT, they fast-tracked him to the main event roster, and I don't think he was quite ready for the WWE style, to be perfectly honest with you. He's immensely talented, he's a gifted wrestler, and I don't think he has that showmanship down yet. If he were to go and season himself for a few more years, and I know he has quite a few years under him before going to WWE, if he could get on a different company that has a different show, like a Lucha Underground maybe, I think you could get that more of who Apollo Crews really is, and more character development, and make him a bigger star. And last but not least, for the best of the rest, Tyler Breeze. I've said it before with some of these guys, I think Tyler Breeze has already got to his ceiling. I think they don't see him as anything more than maybe an occasional tag team champion and a guy that's just fodder for the pull aparts and and Battle Royals. But when he was in NXT, he had that it factor. He has something about him. If you watch Up, Up, Down, Down, the shows he does where him and Xavier Woods are playing SmackDown versus Raw, he's connecting. He's magnetic. I'm just going to say it. He's a good-looking guy to look at. He's marketable. He's a guy that, again, should be something that they're putting towards the front, but alas, they're not, and who knows why. Now, before we get into our number one, if you think I left someone off the list, put someone up too high, put someone down too low, let me know what you think. Hit us up here in the comments. Make sure to like and share, and if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and ding that bell so you get notifications. Finally, our number one person who should leave the WWE, Cesaro. Everybody you talk to, from Jim Ross, from Steve Austin, from any other star that's been there, any other analyst that looks at it, Cesaro should be a top guy in the company. Again, it baffles my mind that you look at this guy who's extremely talented, who connects with the fans. People were bringing Cesaro section signs to the crowd, who has a following, even though you try to squash it, even brings fans out to the bar, who was basically you saying, we have nothing to do with these two guys, so let's put them in a thing. To me, I don't get it again. He's a guy who should be a main level talent. A lot of wrestling insiders agree with me. A lot of wrestling insiders think this and don't understand why he can't break that glass ceiling. But who knows? If you were to let him go, again, he would be a huge star in Impact. He'd be a huge star anywhere he goes, except for the WWE. It makes absolutely no sense that they're still keeping him and not using him. But with all that being said, that is my opinion on the 10 people that should leave the WWE. My name is George Coles, and this has been another Heel Heat Top 10.